now that we've looked at writing participant data to a file, like we've done in the last video, and so we still have all our code here, we're going to look at reading this data from a file now, and maybe doing some interesting stuff to it. So we still have all our code here from above. We can leave it there for a little bit, but we're not going to really do a lot with it. So this section we can kind of consider complete. And we'll just deal with reading all this data from a file now. So we're going to create a variable, and in it we're going to save in the file that we want to read. So we'll read in an input file. And so we'll just call the variable input file, because this is going to be the file that we read all of our participant data, and so it's going to read all of our input, and it's going to be equal to, and to open the file, we're just going to use the keyword open. So this lets us open a file, and then open and close parentheses, and then we open and close the quotation marks, and in here we're going to put the file name. And so to make sure that we get it right, let's just take the file name from up here and copy paste it, just to avoid typos. And so this is going to be the name that we're going to import, or that we're going to open. And instead of writing it like we did here, now we're going to read it. So we're going to use the R keyword. And so this is going to let us read the file. Whereas up here, we were writing to it, or we created it if it doesn't exist yet, or we overwrite it every time and we open it. Now we close the file, and then we can read it. So it's important that we close the file before we try to open it again. Or else we're going to get into trouble. So we want to just remember that we close the file down here. So we open this file up here, and then we close it, and now we can open it in a different format again. And let's just, before we do anything else, let's just make sure we close it. So let's take our input file, and let's just dot close it. So we want to do something to it, hence the dot. What we want to do is we want to close it, and then open and close the parentheses, because the close is a function. And we'll just go above it, and we'll press enter a couple of times just to move the close down. But you know, we may forget about it after a little while or something, but we just want to make sure we have it there. You know, good practice. And so we'll just leave that kind of hanging down here at the bottom, and then we'll write our code in here. So what we're going to do is we're just going to read our file line by line first, and let's just kind of put it back in. And actually, let's just read it into a different list first. So how are we going to go about that? Well, the first thing that we want to do is we want to create a list that we're going to save all of our file data in. So let's just call this list the input list. This is just the variable name, and this input list is just going to store all the data that we're going to read in here. So we're going to take our input list, and we're just going to make it equal to, and then open and close parentheses. So it's going to be an empty list. And then what we're going to do is we're going to read through this input file line by line. Okay, so how would we do that? Well, before we saw there are several ways to read an input file, but we'll just use the kind of standard easy way. We'll use a for loop, because for loops are really nice to deal with. So we'll do for, and our temporary variable is going to be the line. And so this is going to contain each line in the file. And we're going to go for line in the input file. And so if we remember from our last video what this for loop actually does, and then we have the colon here, what this for loop actually does is it reads the input file line by line. So we could also use, the input file .read line, or we can read the whole thing and save it in a variable. But this for loop is a really nice method of just reading the input file line by line without really having to keep track of much. So yeah, through this we'll just kind of read through the whole file in individual lines. And we want to save all of our data in a temporary line element, so that we kind of want to create the same thing that we had up here. We want to have something similar to our temp part data. So each participant should be in its own little list, and that we want to append to our input list. So our input list should contain, each element should be a participant, and each participant should again be a smaller list that contains all that data. So we want to just be able to add all of that into, yeah, we just want to kind of be able to get back our participant data from before, from the file. So how would we do that? Well, let's just create a variable we're going to temporarily save our data. So we'll just call it temp participant, like this. And this is just going to be a temporary, or this is going to be a variable that's going to temporarily store participant data. So each line is going to be overwritten because it's also in the for loop. So every time a new for loop starts, it's going to be immediately be overwritten. And what are we going to make it equal to? So we're going to do some things to this line. And yeah, we're going to use some special features on strings. And I'll write it out first, and then I'll show you exactly what they do. So that, yeah, well, so that we know exactly what they do. So let's just write out first what we're going to do. We're going to take our line, and then what we're going to do to it is first we're going to, so we'll have a dot to indicate that we want to do something to it, and we're going to strip it. And then what we're going to do, so we have dot strip, and then open and close parentheses. And then what we want to do to it is you want to split it. So we'll write a dot split. And now let's talk about what each of these things does, because it's just kind of weird to just bring them up. And so let's have a little example. So we'll just have 1 or 2 lines of comment here. And so what does this do? So we know that our line is going to be a string because each of our lines is a string, because we wrote everything in strings, as we remember up here from writing the data. So we wrote everything in strings. So all of this is just a big word pretty much. So for example, if we read in the first line of input file, what we're going to get in line is going to be max US and 21, and then it's going to be inside of quotation marks. So it's going to be one big word pretty much. And then we're going to have to actually we still have this space after here, and then we have the new line character. So this is kind of what we have. And so what we're doing with the strip is just that we're going to take away this new line, so we can actually kind of put in here what we want to take away. So what we can do in here is we can do strip and then \n. So what this does is if we call on here, if we have this word or this string, and onto it we call dot strip and the \n, like this, what this does is it turns it into the exact same string, like this, but it takes away that \n, like that. So that's what the dot strip does. And now let's see what the dot split does. So on a new line, let's have our edited string. So this is what we get with this. So this is what the dot strip does. And now on this, so this is what's left over, we're going to call dot split. So on this, we're going to do dot split. And so we can do this on strings. And what this does is it splits it. And what does that mean? Well, it means every time there's a space, it considers that as a new element, and it puts it all into a list. So if on a word like this with spaces and stuff, we call dot split, what this turns into is it makes a list, and each element is separated by spaces. So the first element is going to be max, because it's a string, and then we have a space here, and what the dot split does is this means that the first element is done. So as soon as we have a space, that means that was the first element, and the next element is to come. And so the next element is US. And so since it's all in a string in here, it's going to be US like this. So that's, now we've got another space. So that means this is going to be, that was our second element. And so we add a comma. And then here we have 21, and it's going to be the word 21 since it's all inside quotation marks. And then we have another space, but we don't need to have a space here. So if the line would also end, or if that would be the end of the string, then it would still put this as the last element. So what this does is it splits the word, or it splits the sentence or the string by the spaces, and everything that's separated by spaces are different elements, and it puts it into a list for us. So what we're doing here with this line.strip with the \n, so first we take away this \n, like here, and then we split it, and then we have our individual elements as strings inside of a list. So that's what this line.strip.split does, which is really, really convenient for us, because otherwise we would have to individually go through each character and see when we have a space and, try to format it ourselves and put it into a list. So it's really convenient, this dot split, that it just, every time there's a space, it cuts it off and it makes it a new element and it puts it all into a list for us. And so this is actually what, for the first line, what our temp participant would look like. It would look like this list. And so what we can do is, we can just take our input list, and to it we can just append the temp participant, like this. And so, just to kind of see it too, let's just print out the temp participant for participant, okay. And afterwards, let's also let's print out the input list, like this, so that we also really see it. So we've kind of explained it here, but we also want to see it. So yeah, we'll run the code. We'll have to do the input first again. We'll leave that like that for now, but we'll comment it out in a second so that we don't have to do it every time we want to read the file. But let's just leave it in there for now one more time, just to also see what we did last time. So yeah, let's just run this code once, and then let's just see what we get. So first we get asked for our name again. We'll just use the same as last time. Max, and origin going to be US. Age is going to be 21. Then the second, so here we have our temporary part data from up here in our participant data, which is going to be written to the file. Next name is going to be Bob. Country of origin, we're going to have them be from Canada. Age is going to be 25. And so this is what we have from our temp part data here. So we've got Bob, Canada, 25. This is here our participant data, like this. So this is going to be what's written to the file. And now we've written it to the file and everything. We've closed it. And now we've opened a new file and we started going to this loop. And now we have the temp. So the first line is going to be the first line of the input file, which is going to be this, or now it's going to be this. And so we see here max US 21, so that's our temp participant data. So this is what we get after we call the strip.split onto the line or onto the string. So this is what we get. And now we append this here to our input list, so here. And now we see our input list, which is currently this. And now our temp participant is overwritten to be Bob, Canada, 25. And that we again append back to our input list. And so we get our first participant here and our second participant here. And all of this is now on the input list. So this is exactly what we had before. But we kind of closed all that and we didn't reuse any of it. And we got the same kind of formatting back just from reading the file. So this is what we have now. And maybe now we'll just kind of comment out the things on the top so that we don't have to go through this every time. But yeah, it was maybe nice to just see one more time. But now we'll comment it down so that we don't see all this all the time. So now this is what we're left with our input list. Cool. So let's do something with it. Let's maybe save some of the data in a dictionary or something. So yeah, let's make one dictionary for age, and we just want to count how many times each age has been repeated, or how many times each age is going to be there. So we're going to have a variable called age, and we're going to make it equal to, and then open and close curly brackets, and that's just going to be our empty dictionary. So we have our variable age here, and in it we're going to save an empty dictionary. And now what we're going to do is we're going to loop through our input list and we're going to add the age, which we know to be the second element, to our dictionary. So if it's not in the dictionary already, we're going to add it in. And if it is in there, we're going to add one counter to it. So if we have 21 in there, for example, once already, then we're going to say, well, 21 appeared twice. So yeah, so this is our goal right now. So this is what we're going to do to the age. Okay, so let's start off. Well, first we want to write a for loop. So we want to go through the the input list now, one by one. So we're going to go through the input list using a for loop. So for, and now we're going to write part, which is going to be our temporary variable. And this is going to be short for participant, just so that, you know, it's a temporary variable. We'll just keep it short. So for part in input list and the colon. So this indicates we're going to start our for loop. And now what we're going to do is we're going to check first if this age here is already in the list. And if it isn't, we're going to add it into this, or if it's already in the dictionary, and if it's not, we're going to add it in. So what are we going to do? Well, we're going to use the fact that we know that our age is going to be the last element of this list. So what we're going to do is we're going to do if, and now since part is going to take on each participant one by one, so the first thing part's going to be is this whole list. We're going to do if part, and now from part, we want to access the last element. So we open and close square brackets, and we're going to access the last element like this. If part -1, so if the last element of, or if the last element in part, and so part is going to be our first element participant, and then it's going to be your second participant. If part -1, and now we're going to say, well, first let's see, let's say if it is inside, if part in h. So what we're doing is we're checking if the last element of part is in h, then what we're going to do is we're going to do age, and we're going to access the element part -1. So what we're doing is we're going into the age dictionary, and we're going to access the element, or we're going to access the value with the key part -1. Now part -1 is going to be the age. So inside of the age dictionary, we're going to access the value for the key, for the corresponding age, where the age is the key. And we're going to write this in a simpler form in a second, but we'll just leave it like this. So if the last element of part is an age, then we're just going to increase its value by 1. So the value corresponding to the key part -1 is going to be increased by 1. What we're going to do, otherwise, if it's not inside, else, so if the last element of part is not an age, and we will, don't worry, we'll simplify the syntax in a second, but we'll just leave it like this, just to kind of see it like this. But what we're going to do else is we're going to do age, and then the last element of part. So the key correspond. So we're going to add. We're just pretty much going to add this key to our dictionary. So inside the age dictionary, we're going to access the element part, and the last element of part. So that's going to be the key that we're going to access, and we're going to make this be equal to 1. And so if this is not in age, what this is going to do, if we make it equal, is it's actually going to create the key value pair. So let's just make this a little bit easier though, and let's just save this all in a temporary variable to make it a little bit more overseeable. So we'll call a temporary variable called temp_h, or we'll create a temporary variable called temp_h, and we're going to make it equal to the last element of part, like we've done here. And let's just make it an integer, because it actually is an integer. So we'll use this int here. And this is going to turn whatever is inside here into an integer. So for example, for our first line, or for our first participant, the last element of part is going to be this. And so what we're going to get is int of 21 like this. And so our first temp age is going to be 21. And now we can replace this and we can do if temp age is an age, and we take this away and replace it by temp age. So if our age is in the age dictionary, then for that age we add 1, so that means there is one more person of the same age. Otherwise, we want to create this key and we're going to give it the value 1. So what this does really is if it's not inside here, it's going to create the value and it's going to create the key and it's going to give it the value 1. So if we don't have the age in the dictionary yet, we're going to put it inside and give it the value 1 since it's appeared once. And if the age has already appeared in the dictionary once, we're just going to increase its value by 1. And at the end, let's just print the age like this. Okay, so let's just run the code, and then let's just see and let's just understand. So we'll run it once. Okay, so we get our input here, or output here from just reading the input file. So this is our temp participant first, and then this is currently our input file. And now this is our temp participant in the second line. And now this is our input file after that. And now we get our dictionary and we see that, well, first we check, so for part and input lists. So first part takes on this list here, max US21. And now we make the temp age variable be equal to the last value in the participant, which is going to be 21. 21, and we make it an integer, so temp age is now 21. And we check if 21 in age, well, age is empty. So we do the else, and we do age 21 is equal to 1. So we create the key 21, and we give it the value 1. And now we do the same thing for the second participant, and we make now the temp age be equal to the last element of the second participant, which is 25, and we make it be equal to the integer. And then we check if 25 is an age. Well, the only thing in age right now is 21. So we go into the else, and then we say, well, age of 25. We're going to put the key 25 into the age dictionary, and we're going to give it the value 1, like we did here. And then we print the age. Okay, so let's just uncomment this output here. And now what we're going to do is we're going to uncomment everything that we had above here, and we're going to increase our participant number to 5, and we'll just put in some more participants just so that we can see how this dictionary works and how it's going to expand. So let's just run this code. Now we're going to have 5 participants. So we'll start off with what we had before. Max US 21, Bob, Canada, and 25. Yeah, and so we kind of have this printing going on from here all the time, but we can just ignore that. But here we kind of see our participant data growing. Now our next participant is going to be Alice, and she's going to be from France, and she's also going to be 25. And then we're going to have Jen, and she's going to be from, where's she going to be from? She's also going to be from Canada, and we'll have her be 24. And so this is, for example, what we have right now. So we see our participants are now Max from the US 21, Bob, Canada 25, Alice, France 25, Jen, Canada 24, and our last participant is going to be, let's have her be Hannah, and we'll have her be 23, and let's also just make her be from the US. It doesn't really matter. Oh no, well, now we messed up the country and the age. So the country is going to be 23, but we also want the age to be 23, or else we'll get an error in a second if we try to make an integer. So yeah, I kind of wasn't watching the input here. So we can see here, for example, that Hannah is both from the country 23 as well as is 23 years old, which is kind of silly, but whatever. It still works. So Yeah, the computer doesn't know which countries we're talking about. This is just for us. Okay, so this is our kind of input that we've created, and we saved all this to the file. And now we closed our file and blah, 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 and we've opened it again. And now we've read it line by line, and we've made a nice little, so we've pretty much recreated this list here, but we've saved it in the input list. Now we have the empty dictionary, and we can see, for example, that we have two people that are age 25, one that's age 24, one that's age 21, and one that's age 23. So we don't really know their names anymore or their associated countries or whatever, but now we do have some nice statistics, for example, that tell us it just gives us some nice statistics that we can see, what the age distribution is like, for example. And so those are some there we can do stuff again too. For example, we could go through here and we could look for the biggest age or the oldest age by just looking at the key, for example. We can look at the most recurring age by looking at this this number here, this counter for the age.